Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first practical lesson in Module 3. Module 3, of course, as you can see, is theory, practice, and future directions of academic planning in higher education. Today, we'll be looking at how to set up a state university from scratch, from conception to first matriculation. Did I hear you ask, what's a state university? In Nigeria, we have two categories of universities. We have the public universities, of course, as you have elsewhere in the world, and the private universities. Now, the public university cluster is subcategorized into two. We have the federal universities owned by the federal government, and then we have the state universities owned by state governments. Nigeria is a federation of 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. So today we'll be looking at state universities, how to set a state university up from scratch, up to first matriculation. So who is going to be our guide? Our guide is no other than a first-class academic. He made a first class all through his life. First class in primary school, if there's something like that, first class secondary school, first class in the university. And he is one of the leading lights of university administration in Africa. I'm speaking of no other than, you saw it in the intro video, Professor Sola Akinrinade. So we can't bring somebody who has not set up a state university from scratch to come and guide you. It's like a blind man leading a blind man, or blind person leading a blind person. So we brought him because he set up from scratch Osun State University, which is undoubtedly one of the best in the world today. They set the thing up. He was also the pioneer provost of the ICPC Academy. Those in Nigeria, ICPC. ICPC. He was the foundation provost. So he knows it all. So let us follow the leader, follow Professor Akinrinade as it takes us through how we can set up, how we can plan and set up a state university from scratch up to matriculation. Over to you, sir, Professor Akinrinade.
Planning a state university from scratch, from conception to matriculation, we look at major steps in setting up a state university, practical tips for implementing each step, challenges to setting up a university from scratch. And I can show you it's quite a lot, but they're surmountable. Then overcoming the challenges, then lessons for academic planners. There are 6 major steps. One is vision and conception. That is, the administration itself must have a vision for it. That vision could be a product of politics, could be a product of altruism, could be a product of agitation from the local communities, and could be a product of agitation from even the colleagues of the governor in the state. So sometimes we as academics, we have to work with the vision and try to make it better, because it's not always the best. It's not always based on reality or needs. Number 2 is planning. That is identification of the location for the determination of the location of the university, preparation of the fiscal master plan, academic brief, and establishment law. Number 3 is the development of the establishment law, then approval by the NUC, then implementation itself, and finally, takeoff. Implementation, I've identified it including fiscal development of takeoff facilities, appointment of principal officers, recruitment of personnel staff, recruitment of personnel students, and then takeoff. Takeoff, there are quite a number of steps there which you have to take into consideration. The setting up of the council, the approval of implementation committee appointments and recommendations by council, because all the things that were done by the implementation committee must be formally approved by the council. Then number 3 is appraisal of implementation committee report by management, because when the manager is appointed, they must go through what had been determined by the implementation committee so that they can flow into the process. Then development and approval of academic programs by Senate. You have an academic brief, quite all right, but you must draw your academic programs from it. Then setting up of laboratory and equipment teaching centers, because these are things that you will require to teach. Then the takeoff, again, development of policy documents, that is staff conditions of service, manual of administrative procedures, financial guidelines, examination procedures, disciplinary procedures, Senate procedures, research policy, student handbook, departmental faculty, college handbooks. All of these are things you will need to develop individually. You have the academic brief as your guide, but it doesn't contain things like the student handbook, faculty handbook, and you have to break all of these things down. Then Senate and Council approval as appropriate for those documents, those policy documents that are developed. Then there's the commencement of lectures when you are set. Then finally, informal review of curriculum to determine possible conflicts and inconsistencies. There are some courses that are taken across departments like mathematics, could be taken in science, taken in engineering, and they might allocate different units to them. You need to harmonize them after you have started implementation to know which one is in conflict with the other. Then matriculation. Now, what are the practical tips for implementing each step? Number one, division and conception. You must learn to balance needs with politics. We academics sometimes we overlook the reality on ground. Professionals working with the government must appreciate this reality and seek to make the best of what could possibly be a bad situation. I don't want to go into details, but sometimes politicians will give you a hot potato which you need to manage. And it is not for you to complain, but to work through to see the best you can develop from what could be a bad situation. Practical tips, establishing a function of the planning committee. Now, for the planning committee to work effectively, sometimes you need to work in the background. Activities behind the scenes will help to speed up the process for you because you will have achieved so much. When the university project was being done, people thought it was magic to have done the planning work in less than 3 months, October to November. But a lot of work had gone behind the scene. The academic brief had been practically done. The law had been done ever before the committee was constituted openly. So there are quite a number of things you have to do behind the background if you are going to achieve your purpose. Then number two, you need to utilize established professionals, experienced academics with management level experience, and this will include academics, lawyers, people in lands, the professional in the state, works, education, finance, because all of them have one thing or the other to contribute to the process. And then there are state interests for taking into consideration in establishing a state university. You cannot ignore it. Then I would suggest, like was done for us, involve the NUC informally. There are personnel of NUC that can be invited to join your committee so that they can give you the guidelines. They can assist you. They can help you to get it right. Like the law, the academic brief, all the things that could appear complicated. If you have an NUC fellow on your team, it will help to get the process right. You also need to plan the funding process as establishing a committee. Funding for state universities could be a challenge. If you could do it like Osun State University did it, legislate the process so that even if a future government comes, the university will have been established, will have been running before they frustrate it. So try to work with the state, with the local government, with all the interest stakeholders to legislate the funding process for the institution. It guarantees a kind of painless takeoff of the institution. Then engagement with the host community, because they are going to host the students. One of the things you will discover is that the price of the cost of accommodation may go up because student hostels will emerge. And people may want to exploit your students. And if you don't engage in those community, it can create problems for your students in future. Establishment law. In setting up your establishment law, there are dozens or if not hundreds of laws available that you can adapt. But you must be very careful with cut and paste. Because I remember a particular case that I was reviewing when I was in the NUC on my sabbatical after my tenure as Vice Chancellor, when the name of one university appeared in the academic brief of another, meaning that it was the same consultant they utilized. So when you're utilizing consultants for the purpose, be sure that you review everything that is done by the consultants. Otherwise, you may end up presenting the model of, what do you call it, LAUTECH for Osun State. Then NUC approval is a fairly routine matter, because for state universities, you don't need to go through the various steps of a private university. All you need is the establishment law of a state house assembly that must be signed by the governor. That is what you present along with the master plan, the academic brief, and the what do you call it, the fiscal master plan, the academic brief, and the law of the House of Assembly. That's what you present for approval. And with that, it's a fairly straightforward process. Now, the work of the implementation committee. Many instances, some states combine planning and implementation committees. But it's better to have the stages clearly mapped out, so that when you have your implementation committee report, if for any reason any member wants to drop out, the committee will not be affected adversely. So get a report that will be implemented by the implementation committee. Ideally, the planning committee should transform to implementation committee. It will facilitate continuity and ease of implementation. But beyond that, also you need to bring in other professionals that may now be needed. For instance, finance is now more than ever needed in your committee. Works is more than ever needed because you'll be doing a lot of construction. So you need to be very, very sure that the people you are bringing in are those that can add value to the work. Then the next work is appointment of principal, the pioneer officers. The pioneer principal officers to facilitate ease of transition from implementation to institutional management. Because if your principal officers are part of the implementation committee work, then they can understand the vision. They can understand how far the committee has gone. They won't be starting all over again and be reinventing the wheel when they go to office. Then, like I said, learn to engage professionals for development work, particularly your technical committee. But let me give you a warning on the subcommittee. Usually, states utilize professionals from their ministries. Some of them will not go to the field. They will write up their reports on the table. There's a particular instance when we go to a particular campus and you discover that their measurements were inaccurate because they were never even there. They just guessed that that should be the thing. But if you monitor them and follow up, you'll get good results. Many of them are very good professionals. Then the implementation committee must learn to use the subcommittee system. You know that subcommittee is a feature of universities anyway. It might as well start with the implementation committee. A subcommittee system speeds up the process because they'll be doing different things simultaneously. You don't have to wait to finish the appointment of academic staff before you start out of junior staff, before you start out of technical staff. No. Set up different subcommittees for academic, senior non-teaching, and junior staff appointments. Set up a subcommittee for student recruitment. Set up a technical subcommittee. All of these have different works to do. And you can then have the meeting of the larger implementation committee to take reports from each one and approve as appropriate. Number 5, establish a realistic tuition regime from inception. It's almost always impossible to increase fees after takeoff. Indeed, there will be pressure, but once you start, you stabilize. So be sure that your fees are realistic. Don't do Father Christmas tuition for university system. It's not going to work. Then engage with the media for positive image. It gives the institution traction. Oh, we enjoyed a lot of that under my chairman. He was able to engage with the media. And long before the university came up, we had over 100,000 applicants for 500 spaces for the first year. It's because we had good positive image. So engage with the media to give you the kind of traction you need. And then take off. Appoint is not within your power as planners, but you can recommend to the government to appoint appropriate people to council who will meet the requirements of the law. If you have the wrong people in your council, you're in trouble. I was blessed with the kind of council I had, but not many institutions are that lucky. They set up ad committees to handle specific assignments. What are the challenges? Political considerations, I mentioned it. Policy is a reality in the setting of universities, of state universities. Political considerations can compromise professional advice. If there's a change of government shortly after your takeoff, it can also add problem to it. So political considerations can be severe challenge. Number 2, funding limitations. I It can be very severe. Ordinarily, the economy is wobbling. And funding institutions, tertiary institutions, is very expensive. I was discussing with the former Vice Chancellor of Counsel, and he was telling me that for almost 5 years, never got salaries from the government. He was busy raising everything. So funding can be a challenge. Almost every state university now depends on TET fund. This building TET fund, that building TET fund, that building TET fund. So funding limitations can be there. Personal challenge, death of qualified academics and other professionals. One thing we experience, which may also happen, is that initially, capable people from established universities may be reluctant to come to an institution. One, because it is a state-owned university, they will think that it may not survive. And attracting quality staff from established federal universities can be difficult. So we need to also take that into consideration. Then primordial sentiments, and that is one thing that is never written down. But all this is our university mentality. We can do what we like. I remember the time the House of Assembly told me that it's our university, we can admit anybody below the JAMB cutoff. I said, not with JAMB brochure or JAMB process. So primordial sentiments can actually affect what you are doing. How do you overcome the challenges? Number one, work with professionals who are not motivated solely by pecuniary consideration, but in trying to leave a legacy. If you work with professionals who are interested in leaving a legacy, your work is made easy. Number two, legislate the funding process to isolate it from politics. There's no guarantee that it will be sustained, though, but at least you will have made the provision. Number three, to overcome the personal challenge, appoint the best hands initially to lead the new institution and set your standards high, because it will affect the quality of subsequent recruitment. If you appoint a poor quality professor to head a department, you can be sure that the subsequent appointments will reflect that low standard. Initiate and fund your staff development program, because if you don't have a staff development program, it's very difficult to poach. And if you are poaching, you may end up with dregs. So develop your own staff development program that will build a core of staff that will be loyal to you. That's not guaranteed that all of them will return, but at least you have a good percentage of the people that will be there. Regular capacity building and continue professional development for employee staff. You need to engage in regular capacity building. We are doing monthly capacity building for our staff at university every month. All the staff from all the campuses will come to Osogbo for the monthly capacity building workshop. It helps us to do things. People to realize their weaknesses, and number two, to build a sense of loyalty and a community among the staff. It works very well for us. And cast your net wide. Look for staff far and wide. We recruited from everywhere. We had visiting professors from the US straight from day one. Then learn to do team building and learn the long-term vision. Because if you don't build a team around it, then that's a problem. Then balance political considerations with professionalism in appointment of principal officers to ensure buy-in by important service of the state and society. You cannot run away from the fact that state universities, they have this challenge of trying to satisfy egos and political interests. You must balance them. So when you appoint your principal officers, you may have to take into consideration your political considerations. So if you have your vice chancellor from one senatorial district, the registrar may have to come from another, and the bursar may have to come from another, the librarian can come from another, but you can also balance it with the appointment of deputy vice chancellor so that there will be some form of balancing. And then finally, you work with professionals from the state public service. It helps you to navigate the terrain in the state. To secure your funds, to pass your budget, you need to get onto good relationship with them. People in finance, people in Ministry of Works, you need them. Don't ever imagine that they are not useful. What are the lessons for academic planners? I'll start with the university mantra: dream big, start small, increase gradually. Don't have 1,000 courses in year one. No. Do the things that are realistic. Cut your costs initially. Do courses that do not require big laboratories and workshops. When you have stabilized, you begin to add to them. Then start physical development on permanent site as much as possible, because it may appear expensive at the initial stage, but in the long run, it saves you cost. Many state universities and even some federal universities today are still running on temporary sites 20, 15, 20 years after takeoff. They have money from the practical side, which is not enough. The facilities have in the temporary sites are not adequate for their purpose, but they are forced to continue using it. And then enrollment to match facilities. Don't over-enroll when you are starting. You may run into trouble with NUC and with JAM. There's no point, and you may run into trouble on your own ground. Then learn to use, what do I call them? The staff from other neighboring institutions on sabbatical, visiting appointments, adjunct, and other things, because you don't have all the staff initially. I realize, number 4, that politics is a reality. You can't run away from it. Starting a state university is not rocket science. What it requires is dedication, commitment on the part of the state, and commitment on the part of the professionals being engaged by the state government. With collaboration on both sides, it's not impossible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sola Akinrinade. I've not seen anything like this. This is a 5-star presentation, very rich, very comprehensive, and all angles covered. Would like to thank you most sincerely for finding the time to put your thoughts together. Of course, your thoughts are based on your rich practical experience, which we can see flow through this presentation. Once again, thank you very much. May God continue to bless and take you to greater heights. Thank you.
Amen.